Hey, and welcome back to what will be week 10 of our course. I hope everyone had a bit of a break over the reading week and caught up on some things and had some time perhaps for a little bit of rest for the mind. And we're now going to be back at it as we deal this week with the themes of the doctors of the church and women of the early church. For the most part, each of the weeks of this course have been organized by a main overarching theme. So we've touched on, for example, apologetics and persecution, heresy, schism, the empire, monasticism, the councils, and the doctrinal controversies. This week is a little bit different in that it doesn't really have that single theme. It's more sweeping than systematic. And this is firstly because your readings for this week were, I think, decidedly biographical, and they included stories of specific people and their contributions. And that was the case both in the Gonzalez reading and in the autobiographical source that you'll read. The primary source from Augustine is also very much a personal account, biographical. So we're going to continue in that vein, spending some time picking up on a few different loose threads, looking closely at the life and work of some key individuals in church history, first starting by talking about some of the big name players that we haven't necessarily touched on in much detail, including St. Ambrose, St. Augustine, St. John Chrysostom, St. Jerome, and a couple others, figures that are known as doctors of the church. And then for the second part of the material, we'll do a bit of a review survey of what is kind of an often under-attended to topic, and that's the role of women in the early church. We don't always have access in the same way to the voices of women, to know about the contributions that they've made. But it's important, I think, to try to talk about what we can know and recognize that although we don't necessarily have those voices recorded in the same kinds of ways as we do some of these other great men of the church, those witnesses and those lives of faith are equally critical. In that spirit, our quote for the day goes back to the New Testament once again, and to a portion of the 12th chapter of Paul's letter to the Corinthians, a text that I imagine is probably familiar to us. And I read it in light of what we are going to be covering for this week. St. Paul writes, "For just as the body is one and has many members, and all of the members of the body, though many, are one body, so it is with Christ. For in the one Spirit we were all baptized into one body, Jews or Greeks, slaves or free, and we were all made to drink of one Spirit. Now you are the body of Christ, and individually members of it. And God has appointed in the church first apostles, second prophets, third teachers, then deeds of power, then gifts of healing, forms of assistance, forms of leadership, various kinds of tongues. Are all apostles? Are all prophets? Are all teachers? Do all work miracles? Do all possess gifts of healing? Do all speak in tongues, or do all interpret? But strive for the greater gifts, and I will show you a still more excellent way." And so I quote that because of the way that it reminds us of the many different kinds of people, the many different kinds of ministries and vocations that all in their own ways contribute to the church, being the church, past and present. Today we talk about a few of those that history has remembered, while also keeping in mind the great multitude of those that we don't know about who played their parts just as well. and we give thanks that we are counted among that number ourselves, whether our stories are remembered or not.